It's Mike Franklin, the property tax guy. Today we're going to talk about the city of Syracuse and what's going on in their assessment department. The city of Syracuse has announced they're doing a revaluation. Then it will be finished in 2028. Not too bad, seeing as the last time they did a revaluation was in 1997. It's only been 30 years. They also announced that they're going to be spending 1.8 million doing it. And I believe this year's budget for the assessment department is 1.7 million. It makes me wonder why you've got 10, 12 people working in their assessment department and you have to hire somebody else out to do this job. I find that curious, but also the mayor announced that he's going to add 2% to the tax rates, on top of the the normal market increases. So I wanted to review with you some circumstance that's going on in the City of Syracuse Assessment Department. First of all, their Board of Assessment Review is run by a fellow named Josiah. Joe was a real estate broker, I guess, in the past, kind of a neighborhood kind of a guy. They have a retired paralegal. I don't know what that has to do with real estate valuation. They have a guy who worked at a credit union, and he's some sort of union guy, I think, with the fire department. Not sure what that has to do with real estate valuation. Let's see who else they have on there. They got an insurance agent. I don't know what that has to do with real estate valuation, but his brother was the city auditor, so I would say that's what his credentials are. They had a guy who was on there who was a professor of visual and performing arts, is my understanding. Again, I don't know what that has to do with real estate valuation, but the city has no problem taking people's tax money, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, and and they take money, and they're supposed to do the assessment job properly. So what are they going to do? Spend another $1.8 million because they haven't been doing it properly in the past 30 years. And what I'm going to show you here is some things I found in artificial intelligence, Grok. I searched out prosecutions for various municipalities across the state of assessors. I also searched out other types of prosecutions within the city of Syracuse. We'll start off with this 2010 case. An assistant assessor in Syracuse Department of Assessment was accused of accepting bribes from property owners to lower their assessments, reducing the city's school taxes. The scheme involved falsifying valuation data for select residential and commercial properties, costing the city an estimated $50,000 in lost revenue over 2 years. Now, you always have to question this artificial intelligence data. This would not have cost the city of Syracuse money. What it did is cost the rest of the taxpayers money. In other words, them not paying makes it so everybody else has to pay, because the budget is the budget. So it's false that it costs the city $50,000. It cost the taxpayers $50,000. The fraud was uncovered during an internal review prompted by discrepancies in the assessment rules. Apparently that was done internally. Bravo. Onondaga County District Attorney's Office, with the support of New York State Controller's Office, charged the assistant assessor in 2010 with bribery and falsifying business records. The assistant assessor pleaded guilty to misdemeanor charges, receiving a 1-year probation, a $5,000 fine, and was ordered to pay restitution. I'd be curious to know if that was done. Case led to a temporary overhaul of Syracuse assessment review process. Somehow I doubt that happened. Let's take a look at the next one, 2007. Yeah, we're going back 20 years, but there's 11 prosecutions of City of Syracuse Assessors. This every other year they're prosecuting one of these guys. Charles W. Anderson was convicted in 2007 of federal charges of racketeering and bribery. Anderson worked with property developers to artificially lower assessments on commercial properties in exchange for payments, defrauding the city of tax revenue. Again, he didn't defraud the city of tax revenue. He defrauded the taxpayers of tax revenue. In other words, if somebody else doesn't have to pay taxes, everybody else has to make it up because the budget is the budget. So it just impacts the tax rate. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of New York prosecuted the case, proving Anderson's actions spanned several years and involved falsified records to justify the reductions. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison and ordered to pay substantial restitution, marking a significant instance of municipal assessment fraud in central New York. See, the thing about assessment fraud is that it's so easy to do. All they have to do is click their mouse and maybe meet the people at a bar, exchange some cash. Here's one from 2015. The assessor in Syracuse was implicated in a scheme with a local developer. By the way, if any of this is incorrect, again, this is artificial intelligence. I don't know why he would make it up, but if anybody knows any of this to be incorrect, I'd like to hear from you, and I'll make a correction. An assessor in Syracuse was implicated in a scheme with a local developer to undervalue properties in the Inner Harbor redevelopment area. Geez, who was developing the Inner Harbor back in 2015? I don't think it takes a rocket science to figure out who was involved in that one. The assessor allegedly reduced assessments on parcels slated for revitalization projects, allowing the developer to pay lower taxes before flipping the properties at a profit. In return, the assessor received cash payments and personal favors. The fraud was exposed during the New York State audit of Syracuse's tax exemption and development incentives. So that's very impressive that the state found that. I'm impressed. The Onondaga County District Attorney prosecuted the assessor in 2015 for official misconduct and receiving a bribe, with evidence from bank records and whistleblower testimony. The assessor pleaded guilty in 2016 and was sentenced to 18 months in prison in order to pay $30,000 in restitution. The case prompted increased oversight by the Syracuse Common Council over the development of assessment. Did it really? Doesn't seem to be. Something new. The star exemption fraud, 2018. An assessor in Syracuse's Department of Assessment was involved in a scheme to approve fraudulent school tax relief, star exemptions for ineligible parties. The assessor allegedly falsified records to grant star benefits intended to reduce school taxes for primary residents to secondary homes or investment properties owned by associates in exchange for payments. The fraud cost the city and school district an estimated $100,000 over 3 years, and was uncovered during a state review of the exemption compliance. And again, it didn't cost the city $100,000. It cost the taxpayers $100,000. The city got their budget money. It's just that everybody else had to make up for it. The New York State Attorney General's Public Integrity Bureau, in collaboration with the Onondaga County District Attorney's Office, charged the assessor in 2018 with grand larceny and falsifying business records. The assessor pleaded guilty in 2019, receiving 2 years of probation and a $15,000 restitution order, and was barred from public employment. The city tightened the star exemption verification process following the incident. Yeah, just like they did in 2016, 2018. It's just crazy. City of Syracuse Assessor Collusion and Tax Foreclosure Scheme, 2022. An assessor was accused of manipulating assessments to inflate property tax bills on certain low-income homes, excelling the tax delinquencies that led to foreclosures. Boy, they think of all kinds of new stuff, don't they? This is a veritable how-to of assessor fraud. The assessor allegedly worked with a group of investors who purchased the properties at city auctions, splitting the profits from subsequent sales. The scheme was exposed by a Syracuse resident advocacy group, good for them, and investigated by local media, prompting a state inquiry into the city's foreclosure practices. Well done. Well done. Prosecution. The Onondaga County District Attorney, with support from the New York State Controller's Office, charged the assessor in 2022 with official misconduct and conspiracy to commit fraud. The assessor pleaded guilty in 2023 to reduce charges, was sentenced to 1 year probation in order to pay $20,000 in restitution. The case led to calls for reforming Syracuse tax foreclosure and assessment systems. Of course it did. Number 6. City of Syracuse Assessor Fraud and Property Tax Centauri Scheme, 2013. An assessor in Syracuse Department of Assessment was accused of colluding with a local law firm specializing in property tax Centauri cases. The assessor allegedly inflated initial property assessments on commercial buildings, then reduced them after the law firm filed challenges, splitting the resulting tax savings as kickbacks. Yep, seen that one before. The scheme targeted downtown Syracuse properties and was uncovered during a New York State Controller audit of the city's tax roll, which showed unusual patterns of assessment adjustments. Well done, State Controller. Well done. Prosecution. The Onondaga County District Attorney's Office charged the assessor in 2013 with bribery and falsifying business records with evidence from financial records and testimony from a cooperating property owner. The assessor pleaded guilty in 2014 to reduce charges, receiving 2 years of probation, $10,000 restitution order. The case led to tighter controls on Syracuse's Centauri process and scrutinized assessor-lawyer relationships. That's hilarious. Number 7. City of Assessor misconduct with vacant property assessments. An assessor was involved in a scheme to undervalue vacant lots owned by a real estate speculator in Syracuse near West Side neighborhood. The assessor allegedly falsified assessment data to reflect lower land values. And the county district attorney prosecuted the assessor for official misconduct, falsifying business records, supported by an investigation with the Syracuse Office of Accountability, a little internal. Nicely done. Outcome: the assistant assessor pleaded guilty in 2018 and was sentenced to a year of probation. I tell you, there should be a minimum jail sentence, 3 months at least, in order to pay $8,000 in restitution. The incident contributed to a city-led reassessment of vacant properties. I'm sure they did. Number 8, Syracuse Assessor Fraud and Historic District Exemptions. 2021, they made up a new one. The assessor was accused of granting fraudulent tax exemptions to properties in Syracuse historic districts, such as the Holly Green area, that did not meet preservation criteria. The assessor allegedly accepted payments from property owners to classify their buildings as historically significant, reducing their tax burdens without proper documentation. It was uncovered during a state review of Syracuse's tax exemption compliance. Prompted by a resident complaints about unequal tax treatment. New York State Attorney General's Office Integrity Bureau, in collaboration on the County District Attorney's Office, charged the assessor in 2021 with receiving a bribe and grand larceny. That's 2021. The assessor pleaded guilty in 2022, receiving 2 years in prison. There you go. And $25,000 restitution order. The case led to a revaluation of historic exemptions in Syracuse and stricter verification protocols. I'm sure it did. City of Syracuse Assessor Collusion with Nonprofit Misclassification, 2024. This one's still pending. An assessor in Syracuse was implicated. Now, again, I like this to verify this case because, you know, it's just very difficult to get the records. Either that or I don't know what I'm doing looking for these things. But an assessor in Syracuse was implicated in a recent scheme to misclassify properties owned by a nonprofit organization as tax exempt. Now, that will cost the city money. Well, I take it back. I take it back. The budget is still the budget, so it goes on the rest of the taxpayers. So no, it does not cost the city. A scheme to misclassify properties owned by a nonprofit organization as tax exempt despite their use of commercial purposes. The assessor allegedly falsified records to grant exemptions to properties in the University Hill area, receiving kickbacks from the organization. The fraud was detected during a 2024 New York State Comptroller audit of Syracuse's nonprofit exemptions, which found irregularities. Onondaga County District Attorney's Office charged the assessor in late 2024 with falsifying business records and official misconduct, with the case still pending as of March 16, 2025. As of now, the assessor has been suspended pending trial, with potential penalties including jail time and restitution if convicted. Now, there's one assessor, they claim in public meetings. In fact, I saw one today of the budgetary meeting for the assessment department, where the assessor, Matt Oja, told the board that one of their assessors retired last June. And I'm wondering if it was this guy. So did he retire or did he get retired? Because if it's the guy I'm thinking of, didn't seem old enough to be retiring. And my guess is he got retired. So, there's only so many people in the assessment department. So I just, I'd imagine what it would be. But if it's the person I think it was, he told me one time that you will never get my data. And well, I got his data. But why wouldn't you want to give me my data? Because he's doing kickback schemes. Of course, he doesn't want to give up his data. When a municipality doesn't want to respond to FOILs promptly, if they delay, evade, obstruct, and deny, records that taxpayers are entitled to by law, it creates a red flag. When they make open meeting law violations, it's a red flag. But you know what the common denominator of all these cases going back 20 years is? It's the Board of Assessment Review Chairman, Joe Saya. He's been there the whole time. And he's the common denominator. And I believe he needs to go. And they need to make a good faith effort to get people on that board that know something about real estate valuation. And it'd be good to have an attorney as well. I'll be very interested to see how this one turns out. See if this guy goes to jail. I guess it depends on the dollar figure. If it's big enough money, then they go to jail. If not, they get probation and restitution.